One of the most common questions I get is where can I begin with comics? With the endless amount of series and years of continuity, it can be challenging to find a starting point, which is why I started this series. I'll go through this week's new books, pointing out notable new series, ongoing series starting new arcs, and trades and graphic novels coming out. Then I'll finish things up with my starting point of the week, the starting point I am most excited about this week. So let's kick things off by looking at the notable new series coming out this week. This week is absolutely packed with new series, and we're going to start with the one I am most excited about. This was super close to being my starting point of the week, and that is The Moon is Following Us #1. This is by Daniel Warren Johnson and Riley Rossimo, and is that creative team that has me super excited. Daniel Warren Johnson is killing it right now on Transformers, has done great things, of course, like Do a Powerbomb, Murder Falcon, and yeah, I typically rather prefer his stuff when he's writing and drawing. But the benefit here is that we have artist Riley Rossimo. I mentioned a few weeks ago he just got off working on the Sandman series, which I thought was some of his career work, and now he's going into this. That has me excited. All I need to see is their names. But to add to that, we have colorist Mike Spencer, who has been doing great work on those Transformers books as well. Happy to see him teaming up here because a great colorist can go a long way. The premise of the story also seems something I'd be super interested in. It's about a family that loses their daughter to an evil force they don't really understand, and they're trying to get her back with the help of some magical partners. Should be fun, and one thing with me is that those parental stories are easy wins for me. Daniel Warren Johnson is known to really be able to have an emotional core with his stories. It's always there inside the chaos, and based upon this setup, I bet it'll be there again. We're now going to look over to Marvel for Spirits of Vengeance #1. Honestly, every time I look up, I feel like there's a new Ghost Rider series coming out or a new miniseries. It's a bit hard to keep track, and I haven't read a Ghost Rider series in some time. I used to really love the character. I just haven't been able to get into any of the recent stories. Maybe this will be an opportunity to change that. When I look at this creative team for this one, have zero experience with them, so I have no idea how well this will turn out. It does appear that Vengeance, the character of Vengeance, is going to be playing a huge role in this series, and I cannot think of the last time that has happened, so that does pique my interest a little bit. I do think Ghost Rider is a character that's hard to write well, because every time we get a new story, it feels like, okay, now we're going to change this about the mythos or lore of Ghost Rider. And I'm not just talking about getting a new character like Robbie Reyes or recently the Hood. It's always just something like, this is the most powerful thing about Ghost Rider now, or this is where his power comes from. All these different elements, trying to create a new history, whatever it may be. And there's some things that can be gotten out of that that's enjoyable, but I don't know. I always feel like the characters themselves are not always the most interesting, but maybe this will change that. It does seem like Johnny Blaze is playing a major role, maybe even Danny Ketch, maybe everyone, maybe every character that's ever been Ghost Rider will show up in this, which could be fun. So maybe this will change it. I am going to give it a shot. I do hope it's not tied to the other miniseries that have come out recently all too much, and it's new reader friendly. Considering it is a different creative team, I have a hunch that it will be, but we'll see. We're going to take a look at IDW for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Nation #1. And this series actually spins out of the Armageddon game, which was a storyline when Tom Waltz was writing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles before the recent relaunch, or whatever you want to call it, with Jason Aaron taking over. Now, I'm up to date with that current run, but I have not read the Armageddon game, so I don't know how much you need that to understand this. The premise seems simple enough. The Turtles are at a crossroads trying to figure things out, and this is that story about it. And I do wonder if this was like a way of trying to give Tom Waltz an opportunity to continue the story he wanted to tell while still giving Jason Aaron a way of telling a new Turtle story. It feels that way. I don't know how much they're going to be tied to each other. I do know there's going to be a backup story as well, focused on Casey Jones, that is supposed to tie later down the road to Jason Aaron's run. So my guess is this will probably be its own thing, which I don't think is an issue. I mean, more Turtles, the better. And this has been the year of some really great Turtles comics. Hopefully it continues here. We're now going to head over to Image for Violator Origin #1. I mentioned with Spirit of Vengeance how I am not really keeping up with the Ghost Rider comics as of late. This is another series I'm a huge novice in. I have not read a lot of Spawn throughout my years. I've tried on multiple occasions. Every time I have, it just didn't click with me, no matter what version of Spawn. But I will say, as a kid growing up, I was aware of Spawn. I even went to the theater to see the Spawn movie. Still regret that decision. But even in that film, the Violator character was really interesting. It was the best part of the movie, large part because of John Leguizamo's performance. But the design of the character, the clown alter ego, that to me is all interesting and has so much potential, especially seeing the story behind it, like how we got there. I don't know if it's ever been told before. Again, as I mentioned, I am a Spawn novice, so some may have said that this is just retelling a story you've gotten before. Maybe it's not. I do not know. If you're a huge Spawn fan, I know there are a lot out there. I know we've had a Spawn renaissance as of late, and we have ever-expanding Spawn universe. You have a new chapter to look into. The art has looked solid. This is not written or drawn by Todd McFarlane. That actually has me more interested. I like McFarlane as an artist, writer, not so much. So maybe I'll give it a try. If you're a Spawn fan, you want more Spawn stuff, you have this week. Heading over to DC for Multiverses Collision Detected #1. So it's a comic book based upon a video game that was largely based upon a lot of comic book characters. A little snake eating its own tail here, but hey, it's a comic book going to include Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Steven Universe, Bugs Bunny, Tom and Jerry. Should be fun, at least, I guess. I don't know. A lot of old school, a lot of new school. Never played the video game before, but we've gotten a lot of these. A lot of recent comic books based in the universe of video games. Fortnite, for example, which were really popular in large part because they included secret codes or whatever. I don't think that's going to be happening here. Also don't think this game is nearly as popular as Fortnite. I'm old, I'm not a gamer, so I speak not knowing a great deal about the popularity of this game. But I guess it's worthy of a comic book, so maybe people are interested in it. I'm interested to just check it out and see how it works out. The art looks fun. Having all these characters in one comic, that has potential, I guess. We've seen things that shouldn't work, like the Hanna-Barbera line years ago, give us some really great comics. Will this be really great? I am guessing no, but hey, I've been wrong before. Heading over to Boom Studios for The Graveyard Club #1, and the biggest headline with this is that it's written by R.L. Stine, and I did grow up in the Goosebumps generation, remember how huge those were as kids. I enjoyed them myself. You know, of course, they were a bit scary. Maybe not scary now looking back at it as an adult, but I just remember how popular they are. Don't know if R.L. Stine has that cachet with kids today. I know my kids don't really know much about him, so maybe this will appeal to more people my generation. The story reminds me a lot of Are You Afraid of the Dark? About a bunch of kids who like to hang out at the cemetery. One of the kids pulls a prank and things go wrong, and maybe the town seems a bit creepy, of course, because when is it not? So with spooky season coming up, I know a lot of people want to consume all things scary, all things horror. So if you're looking for a new horror book to get into that might have a bit of nostalgia with it, you may want to check this out this week. We're heading back to Image for the Tin Can Society #1, and I'm really excited for this. Now it's written by Peter Warren, who I do not know. He's actually a screenwriter writing a comic for the first time, and that's usually a bad sign. Usually that means this was a failed movie script they're trying to salvage as a comic, but the reason I have faith in it is because it's coming from Rick Remender's imprint, Giant Generator. And right now, Rick Remender is having one of the best years of his career, which is saying something considering how many great years he has had. So if he has faith in this, if he feels like it's something worth your time, I have reason to believe that he is right, because he's hitting at all cylinders right now, and him having an imprint, I think, is going to be good for comics. The story is about a mogul, one of the most famous in the world, who pioneers a lot of great technology, actually being murdered. And it's up to his friends to kind of come together to see if they can figure out what exactly happened to him. But many of those friends are estranged. So again, I could see where this would be a movie. You can certainly see the allegorical implications of it, which Remender stories are known for. The art looks really strong. Again, one consistent with Remender stories, he knows how to pick out great artists. Here we have artist Francesco Mobili, and what I see looks really great so far. So this may not have the prestige of some of the other books coming out this week, but at the end of the day, it might actually be better than all of them. Don't call it a comeback, call it a resurgence as we head over to Valiant for Resurgence #1, or I guess I should say Alien Books, as they're now partnered with them. And Valiant has had a rough few years. They've had some books be canceled, some end short. This was designed to kind of be their relaunch with Alien, trying to bring them back to their former glory. We've had some series released, and to be honest with you, all their new books were kind of disappointments in my eyes. Some of the stories were okay. I thought the art, in most cases, lacked a lot of what I want from Valiant Comics. I am a fan of Valiant, and when they were hitting hard, they had some of the best books going, but that hasn't been the case. Looking at this, though, it is written by Becky Cloonan, who's a great writer. I do think the artwork here does look so much better than some of their other series, so maybe this can be that catalyst to bring back Valiant Comics to what it was. Dr. Silk is playing a major role in this issue, and I don't really know much about that character. I've read some Valiant Comics. I love Archer. I love X-O Manowar, things of that nature. Bloodshot, of course. When Valiant Comics was at its best, it had some of the greatest events in all of comic books because their characters feel very of their own world. When they came together, it felt special. It's not overdone as well. It didn't happen all the time. If this can recapture a similar feeling, be nearly as good, and bring Valiant back from basically the dead, all of comics will be better for it. The next two series we're going to talk about is Goobers #1. This is brought to us by Vault Comics, written by Cody Ziegler and art by Ryan Lee. I'm interested in this because I'm actually really digging Cody Ziegler's run on Deadpool right now, and more on that in a moment. Also, this idea has a lot of promise. It's about someone that goes home for the first time in a long time, and it's one of those hometowns where nothing changes, but in this case, something has. But it's a bit strange because it's been invaded by body-snatching alien bugs. And I love myself Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original, many of the remakes, so I am all for this. This is an idea that's been done a lot, but for some reason, it often works really well, so I hope it can happen again here. The art looks a bit cartoony, looks like it'll be fun. Also very much trust Vault as a publisher. Their batting average is amongst the highest, I think, with most publishers out there right now. Not all of them are hits. With no publisher is that the case, but I tend to like more of their stuff than dislike it, and I like the creative team here. So there's reason to believe this will be another good series from Vault Comics. All right, we looked at notable new series. Now we're going to take a look at ongoing series, starting new arcs. We're going to start over in DC for Batman Superman's World's Finest, #31. I mentioned with Fantastic Four last week that it's one of those books that doesn't rely on really long arcs. Sometimes you get an arc that's one book. Sometimes it's only one or two. World's Finest is similar. This has had some longer arcs that are 8 issues or so, but we also get a lot of one and dones, and in this case, we're getting a brand new arc once again. This is still written by Mark Waid. It does not have art by Dan Mora, but it does have art by Adrian Gutierrez, and I have to say, his art looks phenomenal in this. Usually when Dan Mora isn't on this, I'm a little less excited, but I gotta say, this is looking good thus far. This is focusing on the character of Eclipso. And this series as a whole has been pure DC fun. It kind of exists within its own continuity, taking kind of the best things of DC, not being tied to like all the strange things and everything like that. It's just these characters at their best in a world where Mark Waid can just do what he wants. And Mark Waid is one of the best writers of all time when it comes to superheroes. And this has been one of his best series in years. One of the best DC comics throughout the last few years as well. So consistent, so fun, so energetic. It is just everything you love about DC comics put into one book. If you're a DC fan and you're not reading this, highly advise you use this opportunity of this new arc to jump on board. Heading over to Marvel for Deadpool #6. I mentioned when we're going over a new series with Goobers #1 that I've been enjoying Cody Ziegler's run on this thus far, and Deadpool is a character that is, I think, difficult to write correctly. People try to be too funny with him. He can get real annoying real quick. But I thought this did a good job of balancing what you expect with that character, but also, making him feel like a complete person, especially with the relationship with his daughter. That really at the center stage here, giving her more to do and not just like a damsel in distress. Also love the incorporation of Taskmaster. That's been a lot of fun. I don't love the obsession of focusing on the healing factor so much because I find that to be a bit tiring, but I also get it's one of those things you have to figure out some way of dealing with it. So you have a character that doesn't just feel invincible all the time. And I think it's finding its way, but I really like the first arc. Thus far, I've not really stayed with a Deadpool book in some time. But I think the second arc is going to be the true test. There are a lot of rumors they're going to be killing Deadpool. Will that happen? I don't know. Even the preview here hints at it. And Marvel does love to kill their heroes. I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're trying to subvert expectations, or if it does happen, as is always the case, last year we had Moon Knight. Maybe it's Deadpool's turn. He'll be back very shortly, at least before the next Deadpool movie. And I just hope that it can build upon what was working with the last arc and maybe iron out some of the things that weren't working. Heading over to Image for Ice Cream Man number 41, and this is a series where each issue tends to be its own self-contained story. The last two issues focused on decompressed storytelling. This is set to be a spy thriller. What does that mean for Ice Cream Man? You never really know. This series gives you so many possibilities. You never know what you're going to read. I guess it's like the old box of chocolates. And it's been one of the best books since it first came out. The creativity, the craftsmanship is really solid. If you've not read an issue of Ice Cream Man, you can pick up any issue. Maybe try this week's. If you like it, you got 40 more to check out that came out earlier. Now going over to Oni Press for Epitaphs from the Abyss number 3. And this, of course, is a series that's bringing back EC Comics. And this being the third installment, I have to say thus far I've been mixed on this run. Some of the issues have had some good stories, some bad, some in between. And the talent on this issue, Charlie Adler, the Walking Dead artist, is probably the name that jumps out at me the most. Not as much as some past issues, but at the same time, some of the best comic book creators of all time hit their big break with an anthology book. So maybe this will start breaking that back, where people can maybe put their foot in the industry by getting a story in here that ends up being really good. Who knows? I have hope with this. The good thing is that every time you get a new shot, because there's so many different opportunities with these short stories to get something good. It's not that it's been void of good stuff. I think maybe the anticipation was a bit too high. Now 3 issues in, if it can at least just be consistent, it'll be a step in the right direction. And for our last ongoing series, starting a new arc, heading back to Image for Ultra Mega number 5. No, I did not misspeak. This has finally come back after 3 years. When this was coming out, I looked to see what was the last time we got an issue. Feels like it's been a while. I did not realize it's been 3 years. That's crazy. I do not remember a lot about the first volume. I remember it was a lot of monsters fighting. It looked great. It was a good time. But story-wise, I can't tell you. But I hope that this will try to catch us back up. It is 72 pages, which is great. It is $8.99 or $7.99, so take that into account. But you should at least get your money's worth considering the amount of art on the page. So there is that. If you love kaiju, those type of stories, it lives in that world for sure. So I know a lot of fans have been waiting for this. It's finally here. Check it out this week. We looked at notable new series. We looked at ongoing series starting new arcs. Now we're going to look at trades and graphic novels coming out this week. The first trade paperback we're going to talk about is Star Wars Thrawn Alliances. And I try not to talk about Star Wars too much because it's like the third rail. You touch it, you explode. No matter what you say, people freak out because you have to have the same exact opinion. And nuance is dead and everything is the best thing ever, the worst thing ever, or what have you. However, I do know there are a lot of Thrawn fans out there. I know a lot of them love the Timothy Zahn books, the new and the old, and have felt that these comics have done a really good job of adapting that material. Now, this isn't necessarily a new story because it is taking the story from those books and just putting it in the comic book format. Some people don't love that. I'm not a big fan of just reading something I've done before just in comic book. Sometimes it can work if they maybe put a different spin on it. That's not the case here. They're just telling the tale. But if you always wanted to read those stories, or some people just like to see the visualization along with what they imagined, you can check out the trade coming out this week. Now for something completely different as we head over to Image Comics for the trade paperback for Crave. This is a story that focuses on an app called Crave that is used as a hookup app, which is common with the kids today, as they say, focuses on college kids. But as is the case, it causes things to go a bit haywire as it promises for your desires to come true, and perhaps that is a bit more literal than people anticipated, causing a lot of havoc throughout the campus. And if that sounds like the plotline of a movie you'd watch on Cinemax late at night in the 90s, it kind of is. This is a classic erotic thriller, which used to be super popular in the 90s and later on. Don't really get a lot of them today, at least movie, TV, and comic book form. But Maria Lovelett is doing everything she can to bring them back with some phenomenal artwork here. If you love that type of story and you're just kind of wishing we get it back, think of something like Black Mirror meets Eyed Wide Shut is what its tagline was. If that interests you, check out the trade this week. From something completely different to something completely different, but staying with Image, we're going with G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, Volume 1. And that Volume 1 is doing a lot of heavy lifting because this is actually a continuation of the Larry Hama series that's been going since the 80s. Really the series that established G.I. Joe. This was this opportunity to continue that story. I jumped on board. I have to say I was a little bit lost. They do try to catch you back up with everything that's happened thus far and bring you in. And I'm just super happy that Larry Hama is still able to tell this story. That is fantastic. I did grow up a G.I. Joe kid, loved the cartoon, played with the toys, but didn't read many of the comics. So I did jump into this thinking maybe, I'll enjoy it. I liked it well enough. I haven't kept up with it. Actually really excited to go back and try to read this volume again. Maybe it will click more. So if you're one of those fans that maybe loved this series back in the day, haven't checked it out in a while, want to check back in, I think you'll enjoy it. Or if you ever wanted to try it, I think reading it in a complete setting probably will work better. Has a lot of the characters you know and love, so maybe give it a shot. The next collection we're going to talk about, and the last for this week, is the omnibus for the Donny Cates Nick Klein run on Thor. And this is bittersweet because I didn't enjoy this run. I thought it was bold, it was brash, it was fun. Nick Klein's art was great, fits with Thor so well. I just feel like this wasn't the story it could have been, due to the horrible accident Donny Cates was in, which caused him to be hurt rather bad, and eventually kind of stopped writing for a while. And I felt like this was leading to something we didn't get to. Maybe one day we'll get there. I know Donny Cates is trying to get better. I hope the best for him and his family, and one day he's writing comics just like he was a few years ago. But for now, we do have this collection. And even without that, there are so many great stories within this. The Donnie Blake turn, how they went about that. Thor being a herald, that was a lot of fun. There are so many ideas in this that even if it didn't reach the peak it was going to, still a lot to enjoy. I know omnibuses are not a thing you just kind of blind buy. Usually you're a fan of that because of the price tag. But if you are a huge fan of that run, like myself, and we're hoping we get it collected one day, it's coming out this week. It's all come down to this. We looked at new series, we looked at ongoing series starting new arcs, and we looked at trades and graphic novels. Now we're going to look at the starting point I'm most excited about this week. I'm not going to beat around the bush, or I guess tree, because this week's starting point of the week was a really easy call. Once I saw it was coming out in collection form, it was the choice, and it's Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, trade paperback. And this was one of the best comics this year, or last year, kind of came out in both years. And I don't think I've ever seen a comic come out this strong so quickly. I actually remember seeing the first issue. I was doing my article for Nerd Initiative, where I pick out my top 10 most anticipated comics that come out, and the cover just caught my eye. It just looked intriguing. The dichotomy of what looked like Richard Scarry with this bear logging this or carrying this bloody bag, it seemed strange. What's extra amazing about this is that Patrick Horvath, this is like his first major comic, and he's coming out with this, like one of the best comics of the year. That's like when you get like a rookie baseball player and his first at bat is a grand slam. You're like, wow, That's impressive. Can you keep it going? And at least with this series, it was great from beginning to end. I loved every issue of this. It just really worked well. I just loved all the little details. It was so well thought out from beginning to end. Each issue, I think it did a good job of subverting expectations. Like, you thought you knew where it was going, but then it would able to kind of trick you up a little bit. And it was bloody and gory, but in the most quaint way you could think of. So if you've not read this, this is going to be one of those books that I give to as many friends that I know that have not read it, because it's a perfect gift, really, for Christmas. Even if you're not a horror fan and that type of stuff tends to turn you your way, I'm telling you, give this book a shot. I feel like it's going to be a book that is talked about for ages. It's one of those that people will go to time and time again. It is a timeless book. It could be read now or 10 years from now or 10 years ago, and it would be just as strong. So it was easily the starting point of the week. I do worry that maybe I'm hyping it up too much to the point where it can't reach expectations no matter what. That I'm putting it up too high on a pedestal that it will fail no matter what. Because I do think one of the great things about this is that it was such a huge surprise. It did kind of come out of nowhere. And with that, I think it was able to organically grow its audience and become a rather well-regarded book this past year. So with that, then you always have that wave that comes after it where people are like, it's not as good as you said it was. But if there's anything that is built to match the hype, I think it's this. So I hope I'm not wrong. That's it for this week's edition of Starting Points. Let me know what starting point you're most excited about this week. If you want to check out more of my stuff, look on Facebook, Twitter, all those different places, TikTok, any place that has a platform, I'm probably there in some way or form. Also, check out my weekly article at nerdinitiative.com, where I count down my top 10 most anticipated books coming out this week. But for now, remember that comics are for everyone. The key is finding the right one.